Okay, we're going to use our calculator or TI Nspire to enter some data in here and then get a picture out of it. So I've already entered the data on here. And so I opened up in the menu. When you hit the menu, I already created it. So I'm going to just hit escape here. I created a list, data and lists on there. And so it gives us this chart where we could enter some data in here, and then we're going to label this, and you could label it anything you want. To notice how this is an equal here, this is requiring a formula. We're not entering formula, so don't enter anything in there, otherwise it'll give you an error. So what you want to do is you want to hit this to be an X, because those are the X values, and then here is to be a Y. So what I have actually entered in here is a lot of points. So if we scroll down, it's going to be a lot of ordered pairs here, an X value and a Y value, and there is 80 of them. So I've entered 80 points in here. And so then you label them X and Y. You could also keep it and call this column A, and then this one here is column B, or it's much easier to remember what you call them. So these are my X values, these are my Y values. I'm going to use them as we go along on there. So once you're done entering your data here, never leave the box highlighted up here, always leave it down here. And when you're done entering the data, I would suggest you even click to row 1 and see, because sometimes if you're all the way down here and you do some calculations, your calculator usually calculates it and puts it in row 1. So if you're all the way over there, down there, you might miss it, and therefore you think that it didn't calculate it when it did. It's just storing it everything back in row 1. And so what we want to do then is do the Control I. So we're going to do Control I for insert. And so we do Control I, and we're going to add another sheet. The other one that I added was data and statistics. Sorry, lists and spreadsheets. And so that's the one we did, lists and spreadsheets, not data and statistics. And then now we're going to add a graph sheet. And so when we put that on there, we are now going to have something to graph on there. The only problem is that I don't want to graph an equation. I don't have a function to graph that with. So I only have points. So I need to use my scatter plot. So the first thing that we need to do is go into and change that to a scatter plot format there. Okay, so what you do is you go to menu, and then you go to graph entry here, and we're going to change from function notation because I don't have an equation on there, and I'm going to do scatter plots. Scatter plots means that they're going to plot the points and they're going to be scattered. And so this is the way it looks. So scatter plot needs an X and a Y value because that's how you plot points. And so where did you store all your X values? Well, we stored them in column X. You could also put in there a bracket like that on there. And it should be a capital A. Maybe that's the difference there. I wouldn't do that. I would call it, and that would be the easier way to do this, and just put in what we call it, which was X, and we called this one Y. So I will enter that there as Y. So we have that, and then you hit enter. And if you notice, you're like, it didn't work because there's nothing there. And the problem is that it did work because it didn't give you an error. It's just that we probably have the wrong window. So you might want to adjust your window prior to it. And so the way that you adjust the window is you go to Window Zoom and you go to Settings on there, and then you do the X min, the X max. Now, how do you know what your X min and your X max? Well, the data points that you've entered in your X and Y columns is going to be, you're going to look at all your X values and get the smallest one. And so the smallest one was for the X min was a -3, and the largest one was a -137. 37. And the scale is the tick marks. How much do I want the tick marks to be? And so the tick marks that I want to be, well, the difference between 3 and 137, I don't want them to be 1. And I want them to be something so that if I see the values of the tick marks, I know, like if there's a point, an outlier point, I know which point it is by the tick marks and where it's landing. So I want the tick marks to be noticeable. So here I'm going to do that. Maybe the X scale will be 20. So every tick mark is going to be worth 20 units. And then the Y min, the smallest Y value is going to be 69. The largest X value is Y value is 513. And then again, the difference between 513 and 69 is kind of big. So I am going to say maybe 50 for the tick marks here. So I'm going to get rid of the auto and put 50 there. And then I'm going to say, okay. Oops, I made that mistake. So if you get that mistake, -3 is actually bigger than -137. So here's where I should put the 137. And this place is where I put the 3. Okay, then we say okay. And so if we notice, if we look at that, oh, it's supposed to be positive 137. I wrote it wrong on my notes here. So I'm going to change that to positive 137. And that's why it was wrong in my case. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the menu, go back to Windows settings, and this is supposed to be -3. And this one here is supposed to be positive 137. Make sure you write your numbers clearly, not like me. And so then you said, okay, and notice how you could see some points over there and there were no points over there. So you see that there's an arrow. And so this is what it looks like. So these are all the points that are plotted, but notice how everything's on the edge. Don't like to have everything on the edge like that. So what you want to do is, it's like a picture frame and you want to modify it so there's a border around it so that you're not just seeing the edge. In any picture, you're not going to have the edge of your face throughout the whole thing. You're going to have something around it, some cushion. So we're going to go back and change that. And we're going to go back to Windows Zoom and change the settings here. So -3 and 137 has about 140 units difference. So it's a lot, but not as much as others. So we just need a little cushion. So in this case, maybe we could put that to -20, and this one here maybe to 160. And then the units, we could still do 20, but I am going to change that maybe. No, I'm just going to keep it at 20. And then this one here is going to be 69. So we're going to change that to maybe, because the difference is a lot bigger between 500 and 69. So we're going to do maybe -200. And this one here is going to be maybe 800. And so the difference here wasn't a lot, and the difference here is more. So the more the difference is, the higher the cushion you're going to need to set. And so then you hit OK, and that looks like a better rocket ship. And notice, see how the tick marks, every tick mark is worth 20. So scaling your graph is really important. So when the directions say scale your graph, that means you need to label what the units are on there. And you could tell really quickly. Now here from 50 to 800, maybe that's a lot of tick marks. Maybe we want to change it to 100 so that we could see that. But this here is your rocket ship, and it plotted it for us. And that's what you have: a good window, a bad window, and how to get there. Okay. Very good.